In the quiet town of West Pittston, Pennsylvania, the Smurl family's home looked ordinary from the outside. A gray duplex with tidy hedges, a picket fence, and the faint echo of children's laughter. But what happened inside those walls between 1973 and 1989 became one of the most disturbing hauntings ever investigated in the United States, and one that still divides believers and skeptics nearly half a century later. This is the story of the Smurl Haunting, a haunting so relentless that even seasoned paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren would later describe it as one of the darkest cases of their careers. Sit back, get a bowl of candy or popcorn and the beverage of your choice, and let's talk about hauntings. In 1973, Jack and Janet Smurl moved into their new home at 328 Chase Street, along with Jack's parents, John and Mary. The duplex seemed perfect, affordable, spacious, and located in a safe working-class neighborhood. The family shared the building. Jack and Janet lived on one side with their 4 daughters. His parents occupied the other side. For a while, everything seemed normal. But within months, that peace began to fracture. The first signs were subtle. Water stains appeared on freshly painted walls. Appliances malfunctioned without cause. A TV burst into flames. Tools went missing, then reappeared in strange places. At first, the Smurls chalked it up to bad wiring or the old age of the house. But then came the sounds. Footsteps when no one was upstairs. Toilets flushing, drawers slamming, and then voices, low murmurs, echoing through the vents. Janet said it sounded like a conversation you can't quite make out, as though the voices are arguing in another room. By 1975, the activity had grown darker. The Smurl's dog would snarl at unseen things. The smell of rot and decay would fill the air without warning. And at night, shadows moved across the walls even when the lights were on. And then the entities began to show themselves. Janet described one figure as a, quote, black mass, shaped like a man, but darker than darkness itself. It hovered silently, always near doorways or at the foot of their bed. Jack reported being touched, grabbed, and at times held down in bed by unseen hands. Janet would later claim the entity assaulted her in the same way. The experiences were absolutely traumatizing, but the Smurls didn't want to tell anyone, fearing ridicule or disbelief. When they finally spoke to their local priest, he came over and blessed the home. For a few days, things quieted down. But then the activity returned, louder than before. It wasn't long before neighbors began to talk. Some said they heard screams coming from the Smurl house when no one was home. Others said they saw lights flickering violently through the windows late at night. The Smurls' teenage daughters, Dawn and Heather, started sleeping together out of fear. They spoke of beds shaking, of their blankets being torn away. Jack's mother, Mary, began praying constantly. One night, she claimed to see a faceless woman floating through the kitchen. Her rosary beads, she said, were ripped from her hands and thrown across the room. By 1986, the haunting had reached a point where the family could no longer cope. That's when the Warrens entered the story. Ed and Lorraine Warren, famous for their work on the Amityville and Perron cases, arrived with recording equipment and a team of researchers. According to their notes, the house contained the presence of not one, but 4 entities. One was harmless, the spirit of an elderly woman. Another, a violent, angry man. The third, a mentally disturbed young woman who had died in the home. And the fourth was something far more sinister. Lorraine Warren later described it as a, quote, powerful, inhuman, demonic presence feeding on fear and discord. During their visits, the Warrens recorded unexplained knocking, temperature drops, and a series of guttural growls captured on tape. Janet was said to fall into trance-like states. The walls trembled during prayers. Priests came and they performed multiple exorcisms, and each time the family reported temporary relief, followed by a new wave of attacks. In 1986, the local newspaper, The Citizen's Voice, broke the story. The Smurl family went public, desperate for help, and almost overnight their lives became a media circus. TV vans crowded the street outside their house. Reporters camped on their lawn. Some neighbors were supportive. Others called it all a grand hoax. Skeptical investigators found no physical evidence of a haunting. Some psychologists suggested the stress of raising 4 children and caring for aging parents in one home could have triggered hallucinations or shared delusions. But those explanations didn't account for what dozens of visitors claimed to have witnessed. Clergy members, neighbors, even a reporter, all described cold spots, foul odors, and inexplicable noises. By 1987, after years of terror, the family claimed the entity had begun targeting them physically again. Jack was reportedly attacked while praying. Janet was thrown from the bed. Their daughters described voices whispering their names. Dawn, Heather. The Warrens arranged a final exorcism with the help of the Catholic Church. According to reports, the rite was conducted in secret, and when it ended, the house fell silent. For the first time in years, the Smurls could sleep. They eventually moved from the home, hoping to leave the darkness behind. The new owners reported little to no activity, but for Jack and Janet, the memories never faded. In 1989, journalist Robert Curran published The Haunted, One Family's Nightmare. The book was co-authored with the Smurls and the Warrens. A television movie followed in 1991, amplifying the story nationwide. Now, to this day, skeptics argue the haunting was psychological, or perhaps influenced by the Warrens' reputation. Believers, however, point to the consistency of the family's accounts and the sheer longevity of the activity as proof that something supernatural had taken hold. Jack maintained until his death that every word they spoke was true, and he once told a reporter, quote, "People can believe what they want. We lived it." In the end, the Smurl haunting remains a mystery, a collision between faith, fear, and the limits of what we can explain. The case reminds us that hauntings, whether real or imagined, always leave scars. Sometimes on the walls, sometimes on the people who lived within them. Maybe the real question isn't whether the Smurls were haunted, but whether anyone who steps into a place like that could ever leave untouched. Because some houses remember, and some memories never die. This has been Bed Crime Stories. If you enjoyed tonight's true haunting, be sure to subscribe and keep your lights on tonight. They say that spirits come out on All Hallows Eve.